This is Miguel Garcia coming to you from the Training Services Film Studio. And on this section, we're going to be going over how to properly secure a non-ambulatory victim onto a litter basket. First thing we're going to need is we're going to need 3 separate pieces of red webbing. Okay, for right now, the third piece we're going to set to a side because that's not going to be used till later on. The first piece we're going to consider the chest harness portion. The second piece we're going to consider the pelvic harness portion. Prior to getting the victim onto the basket here, we want to go ahead and prep out our area before we load them in. First thing we want to do is take the chest portion, create a loop, create an approximately about 18-inch diameter loop for the chest portion. The next section we want to have here, we've already pre-established or laid out, is our pelvic section. And we have to imagine for your normal sized person, this would probably be right around the pelvic area, this would be the chest area. So as we continue, we've now placed our victim into the basket. The first thing we want to do is work on the chest portion of the harness. So the loop that we created earlier, now we're able to pull that up over the victim's head and lay it across their chest. Okay, the next thing we want to do is grab the ends of that same chest harness. Make sure that we go underneath the victim's arms. Okay, and now we're gonna make sure that we use the end of that webbing, go underneath the loop we created on both sides. So at this point, it should look something like that. So the next thing is we wanna make sure that we tie an overhand on each one of these ends of the webbing, securing the chest portion onto the victim. So again, by creating that loop that we did prior to getting the victim into the basket, we were able to pull it up over his head and securing the ends of the webbing by creating overhand knots to that loop. Now we're going to make sure that we pull these down and secure them onto the basket using our standard round turn 2 half hitches. Making sure that the ends of the webbing get tucked underneath the patient. So now that we've completed the torso portion of the interior lashing, that's all been secured. Now we have to move over to the pelvic portion of the interior lashing. First thing we have to do, because again, we laid it out prior to the victim getting into the basket. Okay, we found center and we reach in between the legs and pull up on that, creating this little bit of a V pattern, if you can see that. And then the next thing we need to do is secure this by using each end of the pelvic harness, very similar to the way we did it for the chest portion. So before we secure this, we want to make sure that we snug it up high up on the hips and high up on the crotch area, making sure that it's snug but also not too uncomfortable. So right about there. And we're going to secure it the same way we did the chest portion by doing our overhand knot. Okay, so now we want to secure the ends. Okay, so we're going to be pulling opposite that we did earlier for the chest section. The chest section again is pulling down, the pelvic section will be pulling up. This is going to secure the victim in the basket from sliding forward or backwards within the basket. And as always, we always secure the ends by using a round turn and 2 half hitches. So this basically completes the interior portion of lashing a non-ambulatory victim onto a basket. We have the chest harness and we have the pelvic harness. Again, chest harness pulling forces down, pelvic harness pulling forces up. That way, whenever we're on that hillside, the patient won't slide forward or backward within the basket. So the last portion of securing the victim onto a basket is the exterior lashing, which consists of, again, another piece of webbing. We've already located the center and we have reeved the webbing through this portion here, the openings within the basket on both sides. Now basically we're going to shoelace all the way up. One important note, what we want to try to avoid, or you will avoid, is going over the rail with any piece of webbing. We always want to make sure that our webbing is underneath the rail sections here. So right before securing the exterior lash, we want to make sure that we secure one end and then we follow that back all the way through, snugging it up, making sure we don't have any large twist in it. And of course, we're going to finish this out with a round turn and 2.5 hitches. It's important to note that anytime we go over across the patient's chest, we want to make sure that it's not so snug or too snug that it's not allowing the patient to take good, full, deep breaths. So there you have it. This is the department-approved method of securing a non-ambulatory patient onto a litter basket utilizing the interior lash, which includes the chest portion, the pelvic portion, and the exterior lash, which basically shoelaces across the patient's body, securing them to the basket. Now in this particular basket, this one comes with seat belts. So lastly, we want to make sure that we secure these seat belts so that they're not flopping around and getting in the way of the operation. So that's it. That's how you secure a patient onto a basket. Thanks for training with me.